die veld kom dit wyd gesmeer. Die lied van 'n volk se ontwaking, wat harte laat sidder en beef.
Ek smoeg vir die vrese waarmee ons moet lewe, vir guns en vir moord en vir rape. Ek smoeg vir die bad news, vir Zuma en sy views, van ons op TV moet kyk. Ek wil nie meer hoor hoe ons tieners begrawe, oor niemand hul steur aan die wet. Ek wil nie meer lees van affirmative action of beklei om te hou wat ek het. Gee vir my 'n nuwe geit, 'n koers toe plesie en 'n tellery, wat lief kies en skryf en stry oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly. Ek siek vir Malema, sy leuns en sy sê maar, ons hou maar ons mond en betaal. Ons kruip weg in kampe, word blind vir die rampe en bid dat die Heer ons omhaal. Daar's Winnie Mandela wat mense verbrand het, maar nou wil sy huil in haar hand. Die staatskas is leeg en die ANC jeug saai verwoesting en pyn deur ons land. Gee vir my 'n nuwe geit, 'n koers toe plesie en 'n tellery, wat lief kies en skryf en stry oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly. Het betaal vir die grond waar sy kinders se kinders kan bly. Maar sy huis en sy lande is nou in die hande van die vyand teen wie hy moes stry. Ons kinders verstaan nie waar kom al vandaan nie, hul erfenis is uitgewis. Geen volkslied of vlag nie en geen erewag nie vir die helde wat daar nie meer is. Gee vir my 'n nuwe geit, 'n koers toe plesie en 'n tellery, wat lief kies en skryf en stry oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly. Gee vir my 'n nuwe geit, 'n koers toe plesie en 'n tellery, wat lief kies en skryf en stry oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly. En ons reg om hier te kan bly.
You're listening to Radio Free South Africa with Karin Smith on ResolutionRadio.com. Call in or listen now at 607-203-5423. That's 607-203-5423.
You're listening to Radio Free South Africa with your host, Karin Smith, and our guest tonight is my great friend, Shar Grainger from the UK. Shar has very kindly agreed to come on air and explain a very complex situation, which it is terribly difficult to keep a handle on, because every 5 minutes there's some new part of this that people haven't discovered before. Shar has been investigating the Gupta connection and all the things allied to that, which led to state capture in South Africa from the very beginning. So she's a better person to explain it to anybody, especially myself, than I am. So good evening, Shar.
Good evening, Karin. Good evening, listeners.
Shar, it's a real pleasure to have you here because every time I open social media or look at a newspaper, there's a new wrinkle to the story, which is already so complex. So I'm really glad that you're here to explain it to us. And if you just go right ahead, because the ins and outs of this are so difficult.
Right. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to kick off first and talk about the administration process that Bell Pottinger say they are going through at this moment. But concerning Bell Pottinger and the fiasco surrounding the whole situation, it's terribly ongoing. And as you say, every day we connect to social media or we look at some news report, there's a storyline about Bell Pottinger and all that is going on in South Africa, particularly involving the Gupta and their companies. So it certainly seems that Bell Pottinger have looked after themselves very well by keeping the wolf from their own door. So having to apply for administration in Britain is relatively easy, and it's not something that is done overnight. And also, I had a look today at the Bell Pottinger website. They are still in business. Now, you can put your company or your limited liability partnership into administration if it's in debt and you can't pay the money it owes.
Yeah.
You'll be protected from legal action by people or organizations who are owed money, like your creditors, for example.
Yes.
And nobody can apply to wind up your company during the administration process. Now, in this last week, we have heard little rumblings that Bell Pottinger could be closed down. I doubt that that's going to happen very soon because with administration, it means that they can still keep their company, they can still conduct their business as they've always done it, but they must be able to pay their debt. And there is a procedure involved for administration, and Bell Pottinger will have had to apply for this in advance. They would have had to appoint an administrator who must be a professional insolvency practitioner. Now, I also know in their company in-house is a lawyer. Now, he could be the insolvency practitioner. I can't qualify that as confirmation yet. I will do so in the next week. He doesn't really like to take my phone calls anymore.
So, Shar, this could not have happened in the short period since they were. They had to have made a plan to do this beforehand.
Exactly, and what I have surmised is there is just too much convenience. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of work involved when you are planning to go under company administration. The administrator that the company employs will write to their creditors, all of them, and they will contact the company's house. Now, the company's house here in Britain is the company that you and I would go to if we wanted to register a new business.
Yes.
So they would do the registration. They would make sure that everything is in order and that you receive a certificate to say that you are allowed to operate that business in England and Wales.
Yes.
Now, they are extremely strict, and heaven help you if you are 1 minute late with your annual returns. So I think we can get the picture from that. But the company house will say that they recognize the company is now under administration and that a person is now the appointed administrator. They'll also publish a notice of the appointment in the Gazette. The administrator will also try to stop the company from being wound up or liquidated.
Yeah.
Now, if they can't, they will try to pay as much of the company's debts as possible from the company's assets. Now, it appears, I've been to their offices, I know the very posh part of London that they conduct their business from. It's a very well-to-do area, and there are a lot of assets. Unless they are on lease, of that I can't say.
Yeah.
But the administrator has 8 weeks to write a statement explaining what they plan to do. They must send a copy to creditors, employees, and the company's house, and invite them to approve or amend the plan of the either proposed meeting or a previous meeting that they have already had. Now, the administrator could decide to do one of the following. He will negotiate a company voluntary arrangement. This is so the company can keep trading, which I think it appears that they have done.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
But,
could also,
so this is within an 8-week period, Shar, which
Yeah.
just proves the point that this whole story was pre-planned.
of course it was.
Oh my goodness. So there's just one thing I'd like you to clarify for me before we go on. The company themselves appoint the administrator, not the company's office.
The company themselves appoint their own administrator. Sorry?
That is just too much.
It is, isn't it?
Wow. Okay, that I needed to understand that point.
I have a suspicion that when they apologized, I am under the suspicion that it was at that time that they had already started to consider administration or even process administration and maybe even send their assets offshore. Who knows what these people have done? But it takes a lot of time to process administration of a company.
Yes.
Especially one of this size that has got very large branches throughout the world. Singapore, Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, in America. Their headquarters is here in Britain, and all these other little branches are now going to be run and managed independently, and they claim to be breaking away from Bell Pottinger here in London. And that is where I smell a rat, and it's a very big one, and it stinks.
You know this. I didn't realize this, Shar. It's frightening that you can appoint your own administrator who is as crooked as you are, as smelly as you are, and who will do what you want him to do because he's employed by you. Man, this is so underhand.
Well, what really it actually drives me. It's become it's become a situation where I wake up in the mornings and I've got to dig deeper because I have concerns, and my concerns are that during this entire situation, there are some very vulnerable people that have been exploited, that they might not be as intelligent as you and I, that don't grasp and are not able to make sense as you and I can of the depth of the situation. And that's why I'm here talking to you about Bell Pottinger again tonight, because it goes very deep and not a day passes by where there is not more information that comes to light. this is just ongoing.
This is
And I don't think it's going to stop.
No, because every day we find some new place, some new person that their tentacles have reached. And you cut off one and another 8 grow. It is so complex, I don't know how you keep your fingers on it.
With difficulty, with great difficulty. However, I don't believe that they are planning to sell that business yet, because their house is not completely in order, and they need to get that, because I think eventually, after the administration process has managed to salvage a few bits and bobs and maybe find a buyer and sell the business as a going concern.
Yes.
Or perhaps to another company, meaning the business at the moment continues, and if they find another buyer and they do sell the business as a going concern, then the business practice carries on. Will it operate under a new name? Now, that is something that has alerted my attention, because in this country, it's very easy to register a new business. You can just hop on the internet, go into the company house, and decide, well, I'm going to register a business called Red Eye. And you do a search and find out that nobody else is using that name, and you can register a business. It costs you 13 or 15 pounds. And that's just for a basic registration. Everything else you can do afterwards. But you get your name and you get your certificate, and you're in business. You have your business card printed, your letterhead done, you've got a company registration, and off you go for the first year.
With the same people doing the same thing.
Exactly. But under a new name. Now, I used to say that they're not going to do that. And I don't know certain yet, but my little nose gets me into a lot of trouble, because I know I'm onto something, and that's where I don't give up. I suspect that they are in the process of operating or organizing themselves in a new business, but they are waiting for a new buyer to come along and take over Bell Pottinger. In the meantime, they would have moved across the road and have started up a new business in a new name, and everything's as happy as Larry.
This stinks even, as you say, this rat is distinctly stinky.
Exactly. Now, for as long as the company is in administration, it is the administrator that is running that business. Now, we know that the current CEO has left or is in the process of leaving, and it will also appear that based on the certain legal requirements, they have certainly planned this well in advance, because the CEO appears to have jumped ship, and for the CEO to just throw in the towel, and he had a lot of shares in that business. Now, why would he just jump ship like that? So there's a lot of questions that are being asked.
Wow. And we probably never get the answers to them, Shar. Never.
Well, this is all infantile, this administration. I'm still in the middle of investigating, and there's a lot going on. It's a case of joining all the dots.
Which you excel at.
Thank you. But we can certainly see this is the beginning of the tail, and they are going to swallow their own tail. Mark my words. For what is actually happening here under their administration, it's not very good for them, and it's not very good for the people that are involved in that business. And let us not forget about the involvement of the Guptas.
Yes.
Now, it was around February in 2016 that I heard on the British news, a radio station that I listen to here in Britain called BBC Radio 2, I think it is. They had a news broadcast, and it were mentioned that the infamous Guptas had arrived in Britain and were looking to improve their image by using a British-based PR firm. Well, you can imagine I just dropped everything and I was all ears.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Alarm bells began ringing because I knew of their history and their reputation. With an image fraught with so many flaws and so tainted, they would certainly need rebranding. And this is where I began to dig very deep and my investigation began. Bell Pottinger, according to their home page of their website, have you looked at their website?
Yes, I have.
You will have read these words, that Bell Pottinger is a leading, integrated, international reputation management agency. They claim they will help shape their clients' reputation, engage with diverse stakeholders across multiple channels, tell effective stories, and run creative campaigns to enhance their brand and deliver commercial success. I find that extremely interesting.
When I printed that out, I highlighted the stories and creative campaigns, and I thought, yep, that tells the entire story. I would not want to advertise that I did that.
Well, I'm old-fashioned. I'm from the old school, but to me, business has no mother and father, and business is professionally conducted. And when I read words like that, I'm saying, no way. I wouldn't touch that business with a barge pole. Something very wrong with the way that they're doing business, especially when they're talking about stories.
But that is exactly what the Guptas needed, and I believe Zuma was in on that as well. He was also...
I'm coming to him too,
okay, because he was also having the story created, and there are very few people in this world that needed it as badly as that lot.
Oh, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. And Bell Pottinger, they prefer to portray themselves as a dexterous media manipulator. And I think those are very descriptive words that are well suited to them and their business.
Absolutely. Manipulating.
Yeah. And then, of course, the Guptas all arrived in town and they all got involved with Bell Pottinger. Now, Bell Pottinger were primarily mandated to deflect attention from state capture allegations involving the Guptas to benefit their family image.
Mm-hmm.
Now, allegedly using its influence with the President of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, to advance the family's business interests with emphasis on the Gupta family. This was all orchestrated to protect their assets in South Africa, and they have quite a few assets. The project received the full approval of President Jacob Zuma, who, by the way, had also requested help from Bell Pottinger to do with the protection of his son, Duduzane Zuma. And then President Zuma reportedly had also asked Bell Pottinger to create a media environment that would be advantageous to his chosen successor. And his chosen successor is
Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. And one of his ex-wives, yes.
Yeah. Now, she was also the chair lady of the African Union, and her term is now expired. So now President Zuma is organizing her a job. There's a lot of cronyism that's going on.
Where
in this
he can still
agency.
rule in the background and still be on the gravy train. That's the way I see this, Shar.
Oh, that gravy train, it's about time it sprung a leak.
Wow, isn't it just? Isn't it just? But he can still rule in the background because the African culture would not accept a woman leader anyway. So they would have to have a man, a very strong man, behind the throne. And the ANC would accept that if Zuma was still in the background. So this is all speculation on my part, but that's what I see.
I don't think you are far from the mark.
You know, they've been pushing this lady. First she was Minister of Health. And well, we know what a disaster that was. then she was leader of the African Union. And that was an equal disaster. And now she's going to rule South Africa, which is already a disaster. So this is just, I don't know. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but it just fits in with all my theories, everything you're saying.
I think you and I have this undoubtedly. It's a good connection that we have because some of the things you bring up, you've been reading my mind. It worries me. Where are you? You're sitting right next to me.
But what's even more worrisome is that nobody else is connecting these dots, Shar, and that's why it's so important to have you on the program over and over again to update us, because it is so complex. People cannot join the dots.
Well, it's about time they did, because this is for their long-term security and their future of their children and their grandchildren, because South Africa, as I said to you on the last occasion, it's not a country at peace. South Africa is sitting right at the edge of the cliff, and they have to be so careful which way they move, because they're looking already into the abyss. And that abyss is not looking very healthy.
No.
Especially with the elections on the horizon, I don't know. I'm more inclined to encourage people to leave than to sit there
and wait.
I would rather be. I'd rather leave and know that I'm safe. And to look after your future somewhere else. And I also think, if I can just add this in here quietly, is that other countries are going to have to consider taking in refugees from South Africa. That day is coming. And although it may seem like a flippant statement to make today, it's not so flippant, because that day is coming sooner than we realize.
Absolutely, because Shar, you have seen in South Africa the violence leading up to elections. There's always violence in South Africa, but before elections it becomes horrific. The protests, the riots, the strikes, the burnings, the xenophobia, it all comes out then. And so even if South Africa didn't erupt politically, it certainly will prior to the elections, and it's safer to be out of that country.
I think we can certainly keep in the back of our minds that the Guptas say that they are no longer dealing with Bell Pottinger. However, I am saying, because they've got other people that have taken over their position.
Yes.
For example, Anne Seven and the New Age publication, and that other chap that has a very revolutionary disposition. His first name is Andeli something.
Mixamali from Black Land First.
That's the fella. Now, he's a bit of a junkie when it comes to promoting violence and intimidating people. And a man like him, he needs to be put in a corner, because what he is saying is almost too similar to the ambitions of the contracts Bell Pottinger were dealing with. Because these underhanded tactics that were sought to divert public outcry to the Gupta family and the civil unrest and the rioting, the protest action, which still continues to this day. I am of the opinion that this is all part of that program. And we just have to cast our minds back to last year from November coming forward up until most recently and have a look at where those riots are all starting. There was one very recently in the Overberg, which was started because somebody else in a next door town received a cleaning contract.
Yes, yes.
So they form a riot.
But Shar, there was a wonderful piece written, I think it was by Q Elgin, who said that he wishes somebody would explain this to me, because if the train is late, you burn the train down, so tomorrow there are no trains. And as of this week, if your school is ugly and doesn't serve you breakfast, you burn the school down, so there's no school to go to, etc., etc. It is a nation, a culture of sheer destruction. So they don't need people like Bell Pottinger putting a hand in and stirring the pot, because it's bad enough without help.
Exactly.
You know, I just don't get foreign people mixing in expensively and with huge resources, mixing in and getting more people murdered, because the blood is on their hands.
They certainly have a lot of problems that they need to sort out. That is for sure.
Wow. Okay, I've interrupted you a huge amount, but we're coming up to a station break anyway. We will be back.
You're listening to Radio Free South Africa with Karin Smith on ResolutionRadio.com. Call in to listen now at 607-203-5423. That's 607-203-5423.
Alrighty.
You're listening to Radio South Africa with your host, Karin Smith, and our guest tonight is Shar Grainger, trying to untangle the tangled web of the Guptas, Bell Pottinger, President Zuma, his sons, his ex-wife, and state capture of I don't know how many others in South Africa. Welcome back, Shar.
Thank you. Here we are again.
Yep.
Still trying to fathom this. It's something really, but we'll get to the bottom of this eventually.
One day.
But I think, one day, and heaven help us.
Yep.
I hope it's still in our lifetime.
I wonder about that, because Bell Pottinger did such a tangled web here that I don't know that anyone can unweave it.
Well, we have to break them down bit by bit until eventually they crumble at the knees and they've got nowhere else to go.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
The cog in this wheel is the Gupta family.
Yes.
And the Gupta family, as I said earlier, they sought to divert public outcry. And they wanted to focus on of state interference and capture, notably white capital. Focusing on social media, organizing a series of fake bloggers. Now, I've come across a few of those even today on Twitter. Twitter users that had been launched in an effort to manipulate public opinion by using commentators on social media platforms to really stir things up. Thousands of bogus profiles had been created, and they were used together with bots, that's BOTS, on social media like Twitter and Facebook. to handle these purposely created accounts that caused a public frenzy, and at a momentum by using various hashtags, for example, Praveen must go, that still exists today, that hashtag. And the other one is hands off the Guptas. Now, there's thousands of them. I'm just mentioning two. The vicious social media campaign by Bell Pottinger had been described to be a failure. These type of campaigns, they do not work successfully. They must rely on outside sources, especially human beings. And technology is only as reliable as the human being driving it. And these campaigns, they did work effectively in the beginning, but then they seem to have fallen off their little pedestal. And in most cases, they caused a lot of harm because we started to catch up and realize these hashtags, and we started blocking them. So they weren't gaining the momentum that they would have liked to believe they were. And we've also seen this in the Gupta campaign today, and it seems to have been taken over by And7 TV and the New Age publisher. They are very active on Twitter. One has to have a good look and just sit back and write down all the names. And then moving forward, the CEO...
So ANN was bought by the Guptas and used exclusively for government contracts, etc. They didn't use other newspapers, only the Gupta's papers. And it has supposedly been sold.
Well, And7 TV and the New Age publisher, the Guptas would like to have the public believe that they have sold those businesses. But I don't think they've sold them. I believe that they are still involved.
Yeah, the price was wrong, number one. And where did the buyer get the money from? So no, I don't believe it either, but this is another little strand of this web of lies.
Yes. The proposed or supposed buyer, he's just a shop front. He's just the window. And it's what's behind that window that we need to have a deeper look at. And that's why I'm saying, as sure as God made little apples, those businesses have not been sold. Besides, the Guptas, they ceased trading their shares on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. We mustn't forget about that.
Yes.
And do you know that the CEO of Bell Pottinger, Mr. Henderson, to this day, he does not care one little bit about the international criticism being leveled at Bell Pottinger because of the work they did for the Guptas. They were more interested in chasing the money and not thinking about the people that they were hurting along the way.
Yeah.
All those vulnerable people that were being drawn into that web. These people have been abused and exploited en route to the bank.
Yep.
And despite the strong relationship between Bell Pottinger and Jacob Zuma, it is not thought the company would be providing company support in the build-up to the 2019 election. At least this was according to a former partner of the firm, who said to me that they do not have the capacity involved in a Gupta campaign, and certainly not now, because most of those people have left the company. But this situation can change at any time, because they could hop across the road and start a new business, and then the wheel starts turning all over again.
And rehire those same people that aren't supposedly not there anymore.
Exactly. And then there are other problems. it just never ever stops.
Mm-mm.
And then there's this payment, 100,000 British pounds sterling. That's the equivalent of 1.8 million South African rand that was paid every month for this contract. The duration is questionable because it could have been 3 months, it could have been 6 months. That is still to be found.
Oh.
But the campaign was still ongoing, and Bell Pottinger made an awful lot of money about it. But today I find these new events extremely interesting, and I'm watching them very carefully because there is a certain executive at the center of the South African scandal that brought down this public relations firm. And this person has since resigned from his role as a board member of the London-listed pest control and hygiene firm named Rentokil Initial. And his name is Mr. Chris Gagan.
Isn't pest control a very good connection to this? Sorry.
Isn't it odd? It appeals to my sense of humor as well.
Absolutely.
However, he's a 63-year-old and a former executive at defense and aerospace company named BAE Systems. And this is where it gets interesting. BAE Systems and this Mr. Gagan were responsible for introducing the controversial Gupta brothers to Bell Pottinger in January 2016. And this chap, he received a monthly fee from the agency for his services. Now, his daughter, the 34-year-old Victoria Gagan, led the secret campaign that aimed to stir up all this racial tension and extreme civil unrest in South Africa. He has resigned as a non-executive director of Rentokil Initial, where he was a senior independent director and chair of, this is interesting, the Remuneration Committee. Do you get it? Yeah, what a can of worms. Now, just to recap this contract, the listeners, I'm sure, would be interested. Following various meetings with Bell Pottinger, they took on this valuable contract on the monthly basis, as I mentioned earlier, of 1.8 million South African rands, or 100,000 British pounds, to work for the Gupta-owned Oak Bay Capital, led by Victoria, which resulted in this PR and social media campaign focusing on economic apartheid and white monopoly capital in South Africa. Now, this is where I draw the line because they overstepped it by a long way.
Yeah.
This action bears a certain element of racism and discrimination directed at a minority group in the population, which needs to be taken to task.
Absolutely, because that small minority group is so discriminated against, they didn't need any more.
Well, the South African farmer has borne the full brunt of this campaign. They have been threatened off their land, they've had their livestock killed, they have been shot at, they have been robbed, they have even, some of them have been murdered. 53 a day, I believe. From 1994, the shocking figure is 85,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the South African white farmers, they need to be compensated for all that they have gone through. Now, with the resignation of this Chris Gagan, who had only been at Rentokil Initial since June last year, this was only announced on Monday. What part has he actually played in all of this?
So there's another strand you have to investigate.
We have to find a very, very hungry investigator here in Britain. I know a couple of them, but I just need a hand in glove story. You need to find somebody that is really going to fit this job. We need to hire this character and get them to go and dig very, very deep. And we need to exploit this whole lot.
Yes, yes, because someone has to be held accountable, and to date, nobody has.
Well, that is what actually amazes me, and I'm going to cover that in a minute. But in the meantime, we've got Victoria that was sacked. The father has resigned. And at the same time that all the shenanigans has been going on, Bell Pottinger make a U-turn offering an unequivocal and absolute apology for an inappropriate and offensive social media campaign. They said that. The PR agency had initially maintained it was the victim of a smear campaign involving totally false and damaging accusations. What are we supposed to do? Give them a box of tissues for their snotty little noses that they feel that they are now victims?
Good Lord. Have they looked at the real victims of this?
The real victims are the poor, the poorest of the poor and the most vulnerable, and the farming community in South Africa, not Bell Pottinger.
Wow. I agree totally with you, Shar, because the farm murders and attacks picked up, that white monopoly capital became a rallying cry against the whites in South Africa. I mean, people have to look at the effect of what happened there. White monopoly capital was pounded in the press by the president, by Malema, by Ndili, by all these people all the time. It's still being used by them as a rallying cry against the poor remnant of white people.
Well, you have by virtue of the fact that they are still shouting white monopoly capital and this economic apartheid, how the hell can anyone expect South Africa to have a democracy? You have a situation here where you have got what's good for the majority is not for the minority. If this situation were reversed, let's say if you and I, as an example, were to organize a political campaign and set it up against the majority in South Africa, we would have been locked up for treason 5 minutes back.
Oh yes, and they wouldn't have tried us. It's exactly like the people who stood up against the beginnings of the black rule. They're still in jail, and 20 odd years later, they haven't had a trial yet. So that's what would have happened to us.
Well, it is against human rights to place any individual in a prison without a trial. And it is against human rights to continue extending their sentence period without a trial.
No, I know, Shar, but if you look at it, Amnesty International and the human rights arm of the United Nations refuse to even look at this. But that there are such blatant displays of human rights being infringed on and totally forgotten about, but nobody will look at it. So I'm hoping that this case, having received international attention, will make people look closer at what is really going on.
Well, the situation is appalling, and the words that I really want to use are not very ladylike. You have to use big buttons.
Yeah, exactly.
But nonetheless, we have a situation that has transpired, and I have some rather grave concerns about it, because I think that this has been smothered. This is to do with last Friday, the fallout of the scandal spread to the South African arm of KPMG.
Yes.
Now, they are a global network of professional firms providing audit, tax, and advisory services. They audit big companies, massive companies, listed companies, as well as the Guptas, with the chief executive chairman and a whole string of top executives all resigning. Now, there's a few aspects that worry me about this, and it's causing me to have sleepless nights. But nonetheless, the resignations followed an investigation by KPMG International, which said that while it did not find any evidence of illegal behavior or corruption at the firm, it did find work that fell considerably short of KPMG standards. Now, looking at this and looking at the excuses made by Bell Pottinger, they're remarkably similar to that was used by Bell Pottinger, including their apology in June of this year. So something here
is also not right.
Is that none of the dots are joining, and I get very irritable when they don't join, because I can't make them join. I have to go and look for the pieces to put them all together. Now, I'm not getting that. The reason being is because there are too many diversions.
Yes.
Every single day there's a new story. There's this, and somebody said that, and this one did such and such. There are too many diversions. Now, that is where I say, keep the diversions in the front, but you need to look behind and focus on what's behind.
Yes.
Because the diversions are there to confuse us. In the meantime, I wonder how many people are aware of this. Did you know that KPMG donated the equivalent of 40 million South African rand? That's equivalent of about 2.2 million British pounds. These are fees earned from the Gupta company from work from 2002 to not-for-profit groups working in education and the anti-corruption sector in South Africa. Now, let that sink in for a minute. And then say to yourself, where has this money gone? Look at education. Look at this anti-corruption center. Corruption in South Africa
is a way of life.
By the minute.
It's a way of life. You're never going to stop it.
Education. Look at the education. It's a disaster.
So does it not smell of a bribe to you? Because we are being corrupt, so we will then donate millions to the unit which would have to investigate us.
Where is this money going? And then you've got a company, state-owned enterprise like South African Airways, that's about to lose its flying wings, to be grounded if it works for the humble South African taxpayer, continually bailing it out. For the fourth time with pension money. Oh, and the pension money, we'll get to that as well. I mean, this whole thing is horrifying. But where is this 40 million rand? Where did that go to? And that was donated by KPMG. They donated that money to not-for-profit groups in education and anti-corruption center. I want to know why they donated that money and where did they donate it to? Yeah, and where did it get spent? Wow. Exactly. Wow, Shar, this thing is ridiculous. It stinks. Now, on Monday, you had this fella called Tom Moyani. He's the commissioner of the South African Revenue Service, otherwise known as SARS, also known as Star Wars. I saw that meme. I cracked at that meme. He said that the body is to launch legal proceedings against KPMG over reputational damage caused by releasing details of a confidential report it produced for the tax agency. Now, you've got the accusation game going on here. You also have Miami accusing KPMG and then saying that he's going to report them to Malusi Jagaba, the South African finance minister, with a view to blacklisting that company for its unethical and unlawful behavior. Talk about the pot calling the kettle purple.
Yeah, purple. Don't use that word, you racist, again. Can't do that again. Yeah, no.
It's my understanding also, it was mentioned this week that the lawyer for Jacob Zuma was heard to be telling a journalist that he's taking a very keen interest in the KPMG SARS war and report scandal, which may have an impact on the state's evidence against Jacob Zuma. We'll have to wait until Monday, or maybe it'll erupt sooner, but there is a lot more to this than what meets the eye. However, there has been some pretty damning evidence concerning SARS boss Tom Moeni, and with it arrives a huge can of worms. But in between, the blame game and the finger pointing has already begun. And the matter is now heading for the High Court, where a judge will consider the request. But we know that the National Prosecuting Authority is state captured.
Yes.
We know that there could be a very smart and very clever judge that's going to make a decision. But how do we know that they haven't been state captured as well?
Absolutely.
Which reminds me, let's talk about law enforcement. Whilst all this is going on, and you and I can talk until the cows come home, I have spoken to a lot of people, and they have got very similar views to what I have, as I'm sure you have. And we are all wondering why the law is not involved. Why is it that the law stands aside and they are just allowing this to happen? State capture by silent coup has definitely happened. This continued from around 2006. Almost every government department of the ANC has been state captured. So why, in 2017, has it been allowed to continue for as long as it has without arrest or charge of the main instigators and perpetrators? Why? I'll tell you why. Because there is a little man sitting in the National Prosecuting Authority that is protecting all of this from getting through. He protects Zuma. He protects everybody. So nobody is going to be charged, including the Zumas.
It's just Sean Abrams.
The sheep himself, Mr.
Yeah.
Abrams.
Yeah.
There's been no action.
None.
And despite requests, I know that out of South Africa, they have laid charges. But what happens to these charges? They are laid, they're there. Are they written in the charge book or the occurrence book? What happens when that paper arrives at a police station and the charges are delivered? Does somebody go and investigate that complaint? I don't think so, because what happens? What is happening?
An absolute nothing, Shar. Nothing.
Nothing. The South African police are resting on their laurels. In fact, so much so that they're getting rather wide in the girth and using their weapons.
And have to hire security companies
security guards.
Yes.
Yes. And then to add more insult to injury, there's this department called the Hawks. Well, I don't see them flying around, do you? And I've already mentioned to you about the National Prosecuting Authority. They're all state captured. And by their silence, to me, in my book, that means consent.
Absolutely.
And it says everything. It says everything about the attitude of the African government towards their own constitution that they're very proud of and the rule of law. Now, somebody said to me last night, oh, but South Africa is a democracy. I said to them, do you know what the definition of democracy is? I got the silent treatment.
Yeah.
In South Africa, there's no democracy because that was stolen and it needs to be rescued.
It absolutely does.
South Africa is moving into a socialist state. That's communism. And it's not very pleasant when people have been bamboozled in the manner that they have. You have to sit back and say to yourself, what has the actual ANC delivered to South Africa for the country to be a democracy and to be a productive country? I'm telling you, it's done nothing.
Yeah, that is the answer, nothing. Shall we have to take a very quick station break? We will be back.
You're listening to Radio Free South Africa with Karin Smith on ResolutionRDO.com. Call in to listen now at 607-203-5423. That's 607-203-5423.
You're listening to Radio Free South Africa with your host, Karin Smith, and our guest tonight from the UK, Shar Grainger, who is unraveling the unravelable mysteries of state capture, Bell Pottinger, the Guptas, and the Zumas. Welcome back, Shar.
Hello, I'm back.
Good.
In one piece.
That always amazes me that we stay in one piece from day to day.
We try. We cannot try.
So,
I wanted to leave you with a quote because I'm a great believer in quotes. And I came across this little quote today, and as far as I'm concerned, it hits the nail right on the head. And I don't know who it was written by. It's about the discussion of ethics and what we've just been discussing. That's why I'm going to push this little quote in at this point. The discussion of ethics as related by law enforcement must begin with a definition of the word integrity. Do you see integrity happening anywhere in South Africa, in the government?
I don't think they know what the word means or how to spell it either.
Well, it's interesting because from where I'm sitting, it certainly looks like today, if a person is dishonest or they tell lies, they're given a promotion.
And this is all around the world. This is not just South Africa, Shar.
Exactly. They're given a promotion and they're told with a slap on the back, what a wonderful good boy and what a good girl they are. And off they go.
Yep.
We see this happening every single day. And I just don't understand how people can be so far off the mark of reality. My whole life is reality. I'm a very practical person, and I am a person of routine. You change my routine, I'll throw my cats, dogs, rats, mice, pigeons, you name it, out the cot. And then when I'm finished, I'll break up the cot.
Yeah.
Because I like my routine.
We are both Virgos, and I'm afraid that is how we are. I cannot function in chaos. And my routine must be set, and if I have to change my routine, then you must advise me a long time in advance so that I can work myself up to, okay, on that day, at that time, I'm doing something different.
Exactly, but I don't know how people survive in South Africa. It's certainly... It's a new process where they have to become more security conscious. They've got to be more aware of their surroundings and everything that they do during the course of their busy days. How they drive from point A to point B is also a concern to me because it's not safe.
No, and they've got to look before they leave home. They've got to check where there are riots and protests today, and avoid that area. They have to be so aware. I like the taxi wars that are going on at the moment. Shar, a couple of years back, while I was in South Africa, I worked kind of in the center of Johannesburg, and there was a taxi war going on, and I got caught up in it on my way to work, and a bullet flew right through my passenger window and out through the window next to me. Had I been leaning a little further forward, I would not have lived through that experience. There was no way I could have known it was happening. There was no way I could have avoided it. It happened. And this is daily life in South Africa.
It's lost control. It appears to me that law and order has flown out the window. It doesn't exist. They're in a vigilante state, but you're not allowed guns. You can't use them.
No. Only a certain color is not allowed to have guns.
Yeah, and only that species can do and get away with it.
Yeah, exactly. And they can go. They can go to a police station and hire one for the day at about $5. You can hire one if you're the right species. And if these police really think that they're hiring out guns for a good purpose, they're not very mentally healthy.
Well, it doesn't surprise me to hear that. Judging by the amount of firearms that the police are losing every day.
Yeah, losing. Really? Really? You believe that? I've got a piece of... I can't.
Conveniently.
Yes, and those belong to regular citizens who were forced to hand in their firearms, apply for a new license under the ANC, have never been given that license, with the promise that that firearm would be given back to them. And now they've sold, gone, mysteriously disappeared, along with a whole bunch from the Defense Force, a whole bunch of police ones. Who do you think owns those today? Good citizens?
No.
No. The same. So your own firearm, which the ANC compelled you to turn in, could be the same firearm that's used to kill you.
It's very easy to change the serial number of a firearm. You just need some old-fashioned files, and you file down the numbers, or you can take it to somebody who used to be a gunsmith, and they might have this equipment at home, and they can file down the numbers and change a little bit of identity inside the barrel, and Bob's your auntie, off you go. But yeah, it's a cruel state of affairs that's going on there, and I don't think there are going to be too many solutions this year, particularly if there is this ANC meeting or conference that they have in December prior to their 2019 election. I cannot be of a positive frame of mind about that election. I feel very negative about it. It is a very deep worry because, as I'm sure you do, we have family there. We have friends that live there. And we don't want these people that are close to us to suffer any more than what they have. And we really need to consider approaching governments in our respective countries to discuss with them the level of violence and ask them to take the matter up with their embassies that are in South Africa.
But Shar, I don't know if you've tried this, but we had a campaign 2 years ago where every month about 70 of us around the country would write to our respective congressmen, so that's your senator and your congressperson, and we would write every month with updates on the latest murders and the latest tragedies in South Africa. You know, not one of us ever got even an acknowledgement, a form letter saying thank you for writing to us. There was dead silence about it. So we gave up in the end because it's pointless. And then two senators showed interest and agreed to meet with me, and we set up the meeting. Well, they were never there. They never managed to get to the meeting, so that also fell apart. So I don't know what one needs to do to urge these people to please just pay attention.
Like you have, I've also written to our members of parliament here in Britain. I have met with one particular fellow who was a complete waste of my time, particularly that he wrote to the embassy in Pretoria and asked them to contact the African National Congress Home Office or Home Affairs to ascertain the situation in South Africa. And of course, the person on the Home Affairs side would contact the embassy back and tell them what a wonderful tourist destination South Africa is, and that I'm the one that's an idiot and I'm the one that's telling lies. So then this all comes back to me and resulting in the Member of Parliament looking down on me as if I'm some little piece of fluff that fell out of somebody's old Christmas cake.
I know, Shar, but the problem is, it's not that they don't know. They get briefings and security talks and everything. They know. It just doesn't suit them to pay attention. And I'm wondering why. Because if you look at South Africa, between the Russians and the Chinese, they are taking over that country. So how does it benefit either your country or the USA to have that happen?
Well, here in Britain, we have an interesting situation. It's called Brexit.
Yes.
Britain must now look at trading partners. So they are going to be looking at South Africa as one of their trading partners. And they're prepared to pay billions of pounds. Now, it annoys me. I do recognize, though, and I'll say this right here and now, I do recognize that every country relies on international trade. However, Britain sends to South Africa every single year billions of pounds in foreign aid. This foreign aid is supposed to go towards education, medical supplies, hospitals, water purification systems, and housing, and a whole host of other ideas. Now, do you see the hospitals improving in South Africa? Do you see education? We've already mentioned education tonight, but do you see that improving?
Well, let's talk about hospitals, Shar. The state of those hospitals is beyond anybody's comprehension. Steve Biko Hospital, which is the biggest training hospital in the world, to which doctors from other countries would literally fight to be sent there to do some interning because they would get exposure to diseases and things that they would not see anywhere else. That hospital is an absolute wreck. They have no beds, they have no blankets, no sheets, no medication. You can sit there. In fact, a friend of mine has sat there for 3 days waiting to see a doctor. You can bring your own mattress, which they'll put in the corridor on the floor, and make you share it with somebody else. The toilets, the seats have been taken off and stolen. The place is filthy. The baths are full of dirty linen with blood stains, etc. And this is where your country's money and the USA's money goes every year.
Yeah. Where is the money going to? It costs me 70 cents of every 10 pounds I'm earning goes to foreign aid in Africa. I'm not sure on how much actually goes to South Africa. I have got have got a document in my filing cabinet. It has been posted on my timeline also. There is billions that goes to South Africa. But where's it going? Maybe it's paying for the lights at Nkandla or the swimming pool. Who knows?
Yeah, the latest upgrades. You don't think there was enough scandal about Nkandla? Now they're upgrading it some more. Or maybe it helped pay for the mansion in Dubai. Who knows? It's unbelievable. It is just unbelievable, this whole thing. So, yeah, and you're talking about water treatment, the clean water. Have you seen what they're doing with the water in South Africa, what little water there is in South Africa? They are new housing projects, which are RDP houses for the poorest of the poor, which fall down within a year, but we'll bypass that for the moment. They are connecting the storage outlets straight into the sea. So it's not going into a water purification plant where most water in South Africa goes. It gets purified, cleansed, and reused, which is another problem all by itself. But it's not even doing that anymore. It's going straight into the ocean. So this is where your money's going, your hard-earned tax money. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And I listened to our president.
An absolute blooming outrage.
It is.
I don't think it's ever going to stop in our lifetime, but we do have to do something. We have to do something because you're a humanitarian, much like myself, where you don't like other people to suffer.
And no, Shar, from my point of view, it is not only the white population who are suffering. I speak the most about them because there are so many race-based laws directed at them, and they are suffering worse than anybody else. But the blacks in South Africa, the unemployment is 57%. So they're not even looking after their own people.
It was actually mentioned to me on this last weekend by a friend of mine that had just come back from spending 3 months in South Africa. And he said to me that he mentioned that there's around 50% of the population are unemployed, and that 50% is down to the South African blacks. Then I asked him, and with regards to that percentage, what percentage of white people are unemployed? And he said to me, most white people, they usually work for themselves and from their own homes because they are not allowed to be employed in companies. So it's very difficult to put a percentage to that figure. But when you are looking at the job market in South Africa, a large percentage of the blacks are unemployed because they don't have the skills to be equipped to be able to take upon certain roles.
Yeah, absolutely, Shar.
And as a result, you've got this employment laws where it removes the white South African from the employment market. Those are the people that have got the necessary skills to perform those tasks, but they are not even considered.
No, a lot of the municipalities and recently the government themselves put out the order that you must keep positions vacant if you cannot find the black person with the required skills. So, and I take exception to whites being self-employed because they say that there are 4.5 million whites in South Africa, which I very much doubt because that census was taken in the early 2000s. And since then, you've seen the figures of people leaving. You've seen the figures of jobs going, big companies leaving, jobs being lost. Now, a large percentage of that was white. So if we take it that there's 3.5, which is more realistic, white South Africans, and 1 million of those are living in white squatter camps. That leaves 2.5 million. Of those, you've got the elderly, the children, mothers who don't work, etc. So how many does that give you to be in the job market? Not many.
Exactly.
Not many. And
Exactly.
now,
In other words, basically people, I'm talking specifically white South Africans here.
yes,
It's like, this is probably not the right picture to draw, but the only way that I can describe it is it's very much like playing Russian roulette.
yes,
So you could own a lovely little 3-bedroom home in a nice little suburb with your little car and your little security system, and you go to work every day. You say hello to the doggies when you come home at night. You say hello to the children. You cook hubby his dinner, and everybody sits around the TV later, or you play cards, or you play with the dogs in the gardens, and then off you go to bed, and you wake up and you do the same thing the next day. Those people are living at risk because they could lose their job tomorrow.
well, Shar, the latest figures are that there have been 58,000 jobs lost so far this year. But they estimate that it'll be 1 million by the end of the year because of all these international companies leaving, because of the law that says you have to give 70% of your company to black. Give it, not sell it.
What would you do if you owned a company in South Africa and you were told that you had to give 70% of your blood, sweat, and tears to a person that you don't even know?
Yeah. But
that is not even your family, and you are forced. It's like somebody holds a gun to your head and says you give that person 70% of your livelihood.
Yes. And then you...
I wouldn't do that. I'd close the business.
Well, that's what big companies are doing because they've got shareholders. They can't give 70% of their company away. So most of the big companies like General Motors, BMW have left already this year. The mines,
and more will follow.
Yes, and the mines are closing, so and the farms are non-existent. The biggest employers in South Africa are the mines and the agriculture.
Yeah.
So both of those are falling apart. Now you take that little family that you just painted such a pretty picture of. So right, the dad goes into work one morning and they say, sorry, you are retrenched. We're replacing you with 2 black people because you're too white. You have to go. So he goes home that night and he tells his wife, and his wife says, well, maybe I'll be able to get a job. But a couple of years back, they took white women off the previously disadvantaged list. So white women also can't get a job now. So the family live on their little savings until they run out. Now they've got a mortgage on the house. They've got a payment plan on the car. Their kids have to come out of their good schools, which is the only place they'll get an education, because there's no more money for it. So they start selling their possessions. And eventually they've got nothing left. They get thrown out of the house because they can't pay it. Their car gets repossessed. What happens to that family, Shar?
And does anybody care?
No.
And some people are actually happy it's happening.
Yes.
That's what gets under my nose, and it infuriates me because the caring has gone in that society. Yes. Nobody looks after their neighbors. Nobody looks after anybody anymore. They're just in it for themselves.
But Shar, you don't even know your neighbors because you've had to put up these 8-foot walls with electric wiring on the top and alarm systems everywhere. You rush through your gate and close it as fast as you can with your car still locked so that you don't get out the car until the gate is shut. How do you even know your neighbors? You don't. And you're scared of them anyway because, well, they could be anybody. So the whole social structure has broken down. And
the whole structure has broken down.
Yes. And those children in the camps, they are suffering from cognitive disabilities and things because they don't have enough food. They're not being educated from an early age. They don't have any structure in their lives. So it's not just this generation. It is for generations to come that this country is being destroyed.
I don't like to use countries as examples, but have you been to India?
Yes, I have.
Now, here are very big on slums, aren't they? Not because the people want to be there, it's because they don't know any better.
Yes.
So they are in these situations. Now, if you have a look at Saranjapur, where the Guptas come from, there's a very large slum population there. And it seems to me that in South Africa, you've got the rich and you've got the poor, but the gap between the poor and the rich is growing.
Yep.
And with it, so are the slums.
Yes. Yes, Shar, because everywhere you look in South Africa, if you actually look, there are slums. Huge, sprawling black ones. I'm not distinguishing here. But the black people in their slums are given houses with electricity and running water.
They're even given the certificate of ownership before they even put their hands in their pocket to pay for it. Now, in your day and my day, when we worked our backsides off in South Africa, excuse my language, to pay for our property, it would take us about 25 years in reality. But if we were very lucky and we were able to pay that property off in 10 years, you would get your little certificate of ownership. But these guys are getting it up front before they've even paid a bean.
Absolutely. And then you take the wife. And they also get an allowance. So they get child allowances, and they get, which encourages them to breed even more. And they get a social grant every month, etc., etc. And in South Africa, big corporations are encouraged to donate to blacks and discouraged from donating to whites. So they get everything. The whites get nothing, because you need a fixed address and proof of address and all of these things to go and register for your social grant. But these people don't have an address, so they can't register for it, so they don't get it. And they are left with nowhere to go and nothing, no help coming from anywhere. What future is there?
God help them if they get a serious illness.
Well, the leader of one of the camps, the best-known camp in South Africa, is one of the only two official white squatter camps, which was created by the government. The leader of one of those got ill recently, and she went to these terrible doctors and terrible hospitals, and they could not diagnose her. And she ended up in hospital with sepsis because she had a perforated colon. And she died shortly thereafter. Now, that is what happens to you if you are in a camp and you are white.
Well, I have to say that, we have to now start looking at addressing the solutions to the problems. We know what the problems are, although the problems do grow and they evolve every single day. We need to have a look at a way through this, because it's chronic. When I tell my friends to give you a scenario where I live, people say to me, "Oh, that's a lovely accent. Where is it from?" And I say, "It's from Rhodesia." And they look at me and I say, "Oh, it's Zimbabwe now." Oh, then my husband, John, they say, "And where are you from?" And he says, "I'm from South Africa." Now, him with his surname of Nell, N-E-double-L, there's two L's there, he looks at them with his grey hair and blue eyes and his glasses sitting at the end of the nose, waiting for their reaction.
Yes.
And normally, they change the subject. But with me, they'll say, "Oh, but you've got a lot of problems in your country with Mugabe." And I look at this and I say to myself, there you go. They're ignoring South Africa.
Totally.
They don't want to get involved in a conversation there because they are guilty.
Yeah.
And, you know where I'm going with this. and they don't want to get involved in the conversation because they know that it's going to erupt at some point. So they use this political correctness attitude of theirs to go somewhere else and then tell me that in Zimbabwe you've got a lot of problems there, haven't you? And I always turn around and I say, yes, and there's one man to thank for that, and his name is Robert McGarbage. And then I also say, and don't forget it was the British government that had a big, strong hand in that country's demise as well.
Oh,
you
my
sold
goodness.
my country down the river, and then they look at me with their big eyes and they change the subject,
Yeah.
or they pack my parcel and say, goodbye, have a lovely day. And I think to myself, yeah, and here I am living in Britain. I have a British passport, I have an Irish passport. Aren't I lucky?
Yeah.
But there's South Africans that aren't that lucky. So we need to have a look at, when we left, it was relatively easy for us to leave South Africa, but now to leave a country and go to another country, it's extremely difficult because you've got to have the means. You've also got to show some form of a pedigree.
Yeah.
I know that here in Britain, it's not so easy to just arrive here.
Unless you're in other Canada and come across the channel.
Yeah. You know those ones that go and put the bombs on the train.
Yeah, those ones.
Those ones that get away very easily. Now, those ones get away with everything here. Now, you've got South Africans that come here to this country. They get a work visa, or they have a permanent residence stamp in their passport, which expires after a certain amount of time.
Yes.
Now, South Africans often like to go home to visit their families. The rule here is that they have to get permission from the Home Office if they are traveling on a South African passport. Because when they come back, that permanent residence stamp in their passport or even the card may not be valid because they exited the country. So now they go to South Africa, they visit their family, and they would like to get their family to come and live here. Well, it's very difficult because if you do not have the credentials, you're going to be stuck. And to get a British passport, you have to have lived here for at least 10 years.
Yeah.
And you will have had to have a job. So you can't just stop working and you can't be retired. You have to be working because otherwise you're not going to get that permanent residence certificate or stamp.
I know.
You're not able to apply for your British passport. Irish and Dutch, on the other hand, might be mistaken with the Dutch, but with the Irish, if your grandfather was born in Ireland, then you can apply for a foreign birth certificate and then apply for the Irish passport, which is how I got my Irish passport. But also my mum was born in Ireland and my grandfather was born in Ireland. So that's how I came to have my Irish credentials. And when I left South Africa, it was undecided as to which country I was going to go to. So there's New Zealand, and then there was Ireland, and now I live in Britain. And it's very difficult once a South African leaves their home country. They have to be prepared to battle it out from between 3 to 5 years until they're on their feet, because it's really tough.
I know.
But you've got to be able to endure that, because if you are not prepared to go with the punches, then you're not going to go anywhere. And as I understand it, South Africans have got a backbone. They're the salt of the earth. They're very hardworking. They will do any job as long as it pays the bills.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. So they should actually be accepted in countries just because they're not lazy-butts. They're not going to live off the state.
No, they're not. But Shar,
they're hard-working people. And I'll tell you something else as well. As long as I've lived here in Britain, it's 10 years now, I do not know a South African that lives off the state. I know a lot of South Africans that work from home, just like I do. Those people are very hardworking. They pay their taxes, they go on their holidays, they drive cars, they live a normal life, and they're very happy people. They've all got Sky. They like to watch Sky Sports so that they can watch the Sharks rugby or the Globe Bulls or the Tigers or whatever. But they are very rooted into their home habits. They still like their burgers, their biltong and their Sky. They also like their nachi, and that's what we like here in Britain. And when we all get together, we all talk about the good old days. And then we stand back and recognize that we don't have those good old days anymore.
No,
we live here, and they are completely different. So the picture I'm trying to draw here is that we have to learn to adapt, and it's called survival. Now, I have had some terrible jobs, I can tell you what. I've even washed dishes in an old age home, but that was in Ireland years ago because the employment agent had made a mistake and sent me to this old age home where I was supposed to be on reception, and instead they put me in the kitchen washing all the dishes. Well, with my little black skirt and my little black stiletto shoes, I put on these lovely yellow gloves, listened to the radio, and I got stuck in washing these dishes with a big smile on my face because of the paycheck.
No,
now
exactly.
That's what you've got to do. So individuals who are sitting in South Africa and they're wondering, well, what do we do? Do we stay in this country and grin and bear it? Or do we board up our houses because we won't be able to sell them?
No.
What do we do? So if they do go overseas, there are a couple of country options they can go to, but they have to be prepared to work hard for at least 3 to 5 years, and then they will have found their running feet, and then they can start living a reasonable life again. But it's hard work, and you've got to be disciplined, and you've got to get stuck in. And also, you can further your education a lot easier here, like I've done.
Yes,
and
yes.
You do, because do you want to work in a mundane office administrative position for the rest of your life, or do you go to Open University or a correspondence university or a college at night to improve your work skills and get a better qualification so that you can get a better job? That's what I've done, and it's the best way to do it. I had 3 jobs to pay my way, and that's how I did it.
Yeah, Shar, I agree with you, because the culture shock alone when you move to a new country is enormous. It's enormous. It took me 2 years to be able to go shopping on my own, because you look at these aisles and aisles and aisles of stuff and you don't recognize anything. You don't know what's good value for money. You don't know what's good quality. I used to go in, cry, and walk out because I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. So, yes, the culture shock is harsh. But the problem mostly is, where do they go? What country will take them? And can they support themselves until they get on their feet? And most of the answers to those are no.
Well, Britain used to be the first option, but at the moment, with Brexit and the immigration laws that are coming in, it's going to be a lot tougher. Now, my daughter lives in Australia, and she's been looking into immigration for me. And unfortunately, there's the age factor. For a man, the maximum age is 55. And I think for a woman, it's 45. I stand to be corrected there.
And you need a ton of money.
You've got to be financially sound.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to survive financially for a year. and you will get a permanent residence stamp that's valid for that year. It does entitle you to find a job, but if you cannot find a job, you must be able to carry yourself for a year, and that is very difficult to do. I was told that Argentina is a very good option, particularly for farmers, and especially cattle farmers.
But then again, Shar, you take a South African who's been there, whose family has been there for hundreds of years. And Afrikaners are very stubborn people. And they just say, this is my country, I'm an African, I'm staying here. This is my farm, it was my father's, my grandfather's, my great-grandfather's, I'm not going. So you're up against that as well, you know. And
I agree to that point, is that, look, we also had that same opinion that we've lived here, we were born here, we've lived here all our lives, our grandfathers were here, this, that, one thing and another, our blood is in the soil, it's all been taken away from us. What future have we got for ourselves and our family? I've been there. I know what it's like, and I don't blame them for having that conversation. And it is a worry. It must keep them up at night. It's a very difficult situation that they are in, because they have to decide for themselves what they are going to do. And if they decide to stay, then they're going to have to join together and fight the battle together. I'm not suggesting that there would be a war, by the way, but I'm just saying that they're going to have to get to know their neighbor. They're going to have to recognize that they must unite. In unity is strength. They must work together. They have to start rebuilding. And they're going to have to start seeing this as sense, because it's very difficult to leave your home country and go and live in another country with next to nothing money, because it's a struggle.
Absolutely, Shar. But your bugbear and mine, we both have the same irritation, is that South Africans will not hold hands across that language barrier, the English, the Afrikaans, and then, of course, the Boers. And they will not. They will not. There is this entrenched hatred of each other that they are not prepared to see past. And so it's a lot of things that we have to deal with in helping South Africans. And it makes my life an absolute misery.
Well, it does make the job very much more difficult for people like you and myself, who are on the outside, who do want to help. But when we are confronted with these barriers all the time, there's only so far our help can go. And help must be a two-way street, because if we are giving help, we do expect something back. So we're not expecting people to pay for this, but
No.
What we are expecting is their cooperation back. And in most cases, that's not coming forward. But yet they do want help, but they're not cooperating. It's a vicious circle. And for me, I do this on my own, and I volunteer this. And I spend a lot of time doing what I'm doing. And I go to great lengths. Most of it I don't even talk about, but I go into great lengths to talk to this one and talk to that one and chat here, and is there anything we can do to make the situation better? Then you put forward your proposal, and nobody wants to bother with it, or they think you're talking tripe and cheese.
I know.
So
Shar.
what do you do? I mean, there's a lovely Jewish lady here in Britain that donated £15,000 to a charity for the South Africans that are destitute and live in an informal settlement. And this money is to go specifically to build houses for these destitute people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lady that has gone, she's going to die soon. She's in her 80s. She's busy organizing her will, and she's sending out this money. Has she had a thank you back? No.
Oh, I don't believe it.
The attitude was, well, we'll decide who needs this money the most. Now, this money was earmarked specifically for white South Africans who are living in these destitute informal settlements. And £15,000 is an awful lot of money to send, but that's what she wanted to do. Now, I'm not saying that more and more people should do that, but there is a certain culture where I get the feeling that because I live in Britain, I'm not one of them.
Yes.
And because I live in Britain and I speak English, I'm not one of them.
Yes.
And because I'm doing what I'm doing, and also, by the way, I am Jewish, I am not accepted. And I have to say here that it upsets me greatly when I'm doing what I'm doing, fighting their battles that they should be doing, that now they start insulting the Jews. I know a lot of Jews and Israelis that have bent over backwards to help and support those in South Africa. So, as I said a little while ago, a little less of this bashing of Jews and Israelis, because we're doing a lot for your country. And the little lady here that I will call Gladys, donating all that lovely money, when she gets a thank you, I'll be very happy.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, I can definitely direct you to a charity that is doing houses for these people and will say thank you and desperately need help. Shall we coming to the end of the show? Do you have some final thoughts?
My thoughts are actually I'm very gravely concerned, because not a day goes by where there is not some issue going on. And it is very dissettling for individuals, both young and old, because it creates a lot of instability and growth and financial poverty and goodness knows what else. And people really need help that side. And if only people would work together, then maybe we could have a better process, and we could, who knows, give them their democracy back so that they don't have to leave the country. But something's got to happen, and for that to happen, it's got to be unity. They've got to be prepared to say, well, okay, fine, I'm English, you're Afrikaans, somehow we'll manage to talk to each other and we'll get this job done. That's the attitude. They've got to have that attitude and get cracking on with it today, not tomorrow because it's too late.
And on those wise words, thank you very much for listening. We will be back next week. And I'd like to end the show tonight by saying that my prayers, thoughts, and best wishes go out to King Cornelius III, Queen Jenny, their counselors, and all those who have helped with the secession of the Cape, which is now the country of the United States of Good Hope. And instead of ending on our usual distem, I would like to end on a song by Tattoo Billy called Praise Him.
Once I was a blind man, wandering to and fro. Once I was in sin, out of control. But He reached down and picked me up, knocked the scales from my eyes, and now I see. Praise Him, praise Him, praise His holy name. I was in sin, but He loved me just the same. Praise Him, praise Him, praise Him, the beginning and the end. When I leave this world, I want to be praising His name. Suffer little children, come on to thee. The Lamb's blood is life, He'll set you free. Deep breath, oh breath, starving and deep, save your soul, your heart free. Praise Him, praise Him, praise Him, the ruler of this world, Lord of lords and King of kings. Praise Him, praise Him, morning, noon,